Good evening and welcome to the Crossroads Career Seminar tonight. We have a good program for you tonight. We really appreciate you joining us. Thank you for being here. My name is Tom Jacobson. On a volunteer basis, I lead one of the three Crossroads groups out of Woodbury. There are three locations, as I indicated, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that at the end of the seminar when we go through a brief presentation on what Crossroads offers. Crossroads offers a lot of things for free and a lot of great opportunities for you to take advantage of while you're in transition, or if you're thinking about being in transition, or you just join us for the great speakers. There's a lot of great opportunities on our website and through Crossroads. Again, welcome. I hope you enjoy and get a lot out of the seminar tonight. Let me just quickly share with you what our agenda is for tonight. I'm going to do this brief welcome here, for about 5 minutes at the most. And then I'm going to introduce a career Crossroads, or a Crossroads in my career speaker. Tonight it's Skip Nelson. And then I'm going to introduce our speaker, George Murray, who will be talking from about 7:15 to 8:15 thereabouts. And then I'll do the wrap up with the Crossroads overview and wrap up. So, and that'll hopefully will be done. We'll definitely be done by 8:30 then. So. Now I'd like to share a little bit of wisdom out of the Bible. In the book of Proverbs 18, verse 15, the heart of the prudent acquires knowledge, and the ear of the wise seeks knowledge. If, knowledge is accessible everywhere, and it is up to you to find as much of it as possible and gather it and use it, and it will impact your life greatly. It's a real interesting verse because it really has two parts to it, and it really talks a great deal about those who are just seeking it but really don't acquire it, and those who are really just out there trying to listen for every bit of knowledge they can gather and find out what life's mysteries are and what God has in store for us. So the knowledge is accessible, so gather as much as you can. Because it will help you greatly. God gives us a lot of great advice through scriptures, so heed that and work diligently to gather your knowledge. Let me start us off with a quick prayer. Lord, thank you for bringing us together tonight to share and to grow. Hopefully guide us as you will through your plans for us, and help us in our transition, especially those of us who are in transition for the first time. Lead us to where you're taking us, and really help us through whatever we can do with you through prayer, help us to find that next great opportunity that's available to us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay. Now I'd like to share that video with you of Skip Nelson speaking on his career crossroads in his career. All right. And Skip is a volunteer with Crossroads and works out of the Eden Prairie Grace Church. And take it away, Skip.
But Harry asked me to share a little bit about my own journey, so I'm going to share my screen with you, and we'll talk a little bit about my journey. Life unfolds in ways, kind of as Harry referenced, that we can't really imagine, right? I'm sure those of you that are in job transition, pretty much exactly like you had planned it, right? Just exactly. No, a lot of times when we're in job transition, it wasn't part of our plan at all, was it? It just happened, and then we got to try to figure it out. And so this was no different in a number of points in my life, but I started my life pretty darn sweet. Nice ride. If I can get my, there we go. Nice ride, nice little chariot there I'm in. That's me, and that's my father giving me my very first life insurance policy. He was with a company called Lutheran Brotherhood, and that company actually became Thrivent, which is the company that I work with. But as it unfolded, I was around that company my whole life, and in a nice little cushy bassinet, that wasn't the path that I wanted in financial services and insurance or whatever. I wanted to start my own company. So I did. Out of college, the business partner, I started a company right out of my parents' basement, actually. And it uncorked a incredible journey. But it was in that journey and in life, I found that sometimes God's blessings aren't what he gives us, but really what he takes away from us. Because ultimately, as Harry's Bible quote noted, he knows best, even though if we don't always understand what his plan is. And mine was no different than that. And I found a lot of times, whether professionally, as my career unfolded, or in life, I'd ask the question, why? Why are certain things happening? Why did I lose my job? You might be asking, or why did things happen in our lives that we didn't plan for, or didn't want? And so I'd like to relate a few things that happened in my life that I asked this question, why? I started my company, as I mentioned, built a multi-million-dollar company out of my parents' basement. I employed about 40 people. It was an amazing journey. Owning your own business when it works is nothing better, and when it doesn't work, probably nothing worse. And through a number of things that happened, the economy hit in 2008 and 9, really was difficult and damaged us. My business partner's wife got very ill, and most of which was not covered by insurance, so we funded that. And she was in a hospital for about a year. A lot of things happened, and it got to the point where we just couldn't do it anymore. We couldn't run our business, and we had to be done with it. And it didn't end the way we wanted, and it was really, really hard. 27 years of building and effort, and it was over. And certainly I asked why. In that period, a lot of times I was a single guy, and I wanted to be married and have a family. And I dated a lot. I think 𝙦𝙤𝙥, the dating site, has got a wing on their headquarters dedicated to me because I was such a frequent user of their services. I dated blind dates, everything I could. I was a very active dater, and yet I was not married. And why? I felt that need, and finally I did get married at age 50. It took me till then. Maybe it took me then till I found somebody that would take me. But either way, it was 50 by the time. And then I wanted to have kids, and we struggled, and it was a painful struggle. And finally we did. We were blessed with our wonderful son Asher. Answered a prayer. Why was it such a struggle? And then at age 1, we heard the words that no parent ever wants to hear. Your son has cancer. Why? Still get emotional. Why? This poor innocent little child. And we had questions about other questions, like, is he going to die? What does this mean? And it was a really, really difficult journey of treatments and seeing him suffer. Why? And but he made it, and he's doing great today. The reason I go through a lot of these things that were part of my journey in life is we don't know why sometimes, but I would argue that really is not the right question. God knows always the why, but we don't frequently. In Isaiah 55, it says, my thoughts are not your thoughts. My ways are not your ways, declares the Lord. Just as the heavens are higher than earth, so my ways are higher than your ways, and my thoughts are higher than your thoughts. In other words, he knows, he's got the picture. He understands what's going on, even when we don't. How about here? You drew near when I called on you. You said, do not fear. So there is a lot in the Bible that is so reassuring, when sometimes in life we feel it is just us, nobody's experienced what we've experienced before. It's our burden, when it is not. John said, I have told you this so that through me you may have peace. In the world you'll have troubles, but be courageous. I've overcome the world. God's done everything, and he can certainly help us in whatever whys we might have. So let me give you a little bit of an update. As I mentioned, my son's doing well. He just turned 6. In 2020, he was named the Twin Cities Light the Night Honored Hero from the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. He's doing great, and we feel so blessed that he came through on the other side and is healthy, and we have every belief that this will never be a problem for him again. Career-wise, at 50, I started a new career as a financial advisor back at the company that my father had been with. Maybe he knew better, but I wouldn't trade my experience of 27 years of business ownership for anything. It was incredible, and I learned so much. But I've now had the privilege of helping people in their financial journey, and was recognized multiple months in a row for one of the top customer service providers, top customer rating in the company. And it's now almost 24 months in a row. I didn't want to cloud the table with with all those awards, but I feel very privileged for that. And it's been such a blessing. Being a financial advisor in my job transition wasn't even on my radar screen as far as what I was looking to do, but God had a different plan. And I kind of stumbled on it. And it's been beyond anything I could have imagined and what I was looking to do. So God knew. And I would just leave you with a quote from Frederick Macaulay. And he said, "He who has a why to live can conquer almost any how." But the why he's talking about is not the why that I referenced earlier, the why me. That's not the right why. And we don't need to worry about that. God's got that. The why is, what's the why in you, in your job search? What is the why as far as what drives you on a day-to-day basis to do what you do? And when you find your why, that will carry you through all the unknowns. That's my why. The wonderful wife I've been blessed with, Asher, and we were then blessed with Margaret, who's now 11 months old. God's plan for us is beyond anything that we can imagine, certainly beyond anything I could imagine. But I was blessed and continue to be blessed each day. And I wish you in your journey of whys in your job transition, turn to God, lean on God, and he will too bless you beyond anything you can imagine. Amen.
Oh, thank you, Skip. That was a wonderful transition story. And we do appreciate you being with us via video tonight to share that with us. So thank you. Next, I'd like to introduce our seminar speaker, George Murray. George is a proud Army vet. He's followed that by 25 years of global operations leadership in manufacturing. He's published a wonderful book called Hired that'll cut your career search in half. He's a consummate networker, a wonderful human being, and in fact, George is one of the people that I admire most because he can ride a Harley, and I don't get to ride a Harley, but he certainly does, and we sure appreciate having George with us tonight. I think George is with us tonight. I'm waiting for him to join. There he is. George, it's all yours.
Well, thank you for that introduction. I appreciate you and Skip giving me the time to present to you today. And you know what? Anybody can ride a Harley, but only the real people ride Harleys. Everybody else runs rice burners. So I'm going to get right into it. Let me share my screen. Let me know. I won't be able to see any questions. So if you have any questions, by all means, interrupt. This is only going to be probably about 25 minutes. But it's what I have found the success in networking. Give you a little bit of history. 2016, I was in my first career transition, like most, wasn't prepared, wasn't taught, didn't tell me all the problems and challenges I was going to face, both emotionally as well as professionally. And one of the things that I realized early on, talking with some great people like Greg Rye, Lenny Newman, and such, is that, George, you have to get out there and you have to network. And I didn't know how to even spell it, let alone do it. But I believe that anybody can be good at networking. Just be willing to put yourself out there. And so we'll go through what I found is the 7 successful tips in networking. But more importantly, why should we network? How can we network? Even if I'm an introvert, like I was back in 2016, if those people who do know me now, like Harry, be like, I never realized that you were an introvert. Yeah, I could definitely not look to talk to anybody, sit in the corner, be happy with life just as it is. But what I realized in career transition is I was missing out. So today we're going to kind of go over what is networking, what it's not. Introverts versus extroverts, does it matter? And preparing your network pipeline. So if you're in career transition, or if you've already secured a job, or you may be starting your own particular company, you need to turn around and develop a pipeline, develop target industries, target companies. How do I do that? Knowing your value brand versus an elevator pitch, and we'll talk a lot about that. And then your worth, because again, if you're in career transition like I was a few times, it can hit your ego and you can really second guess yourself and your confidence level goes down. So how do I keep that going? One of the things that I find in the first networking meetings with people who are in career transition their first time, or maybe their first time in maybe 5+ years, networking in the job transition process changes about every 18 months. So if you're not learning and you're not networking, and more importantly, you don't know your ask and being willing to help others in career transition, it makes it a little bit difficult and a lot longer in your process. And then things like, how do you follow up? When do I follow up? Top of mind. And then finally, creating that personal board of advisors that I speak so much about, that's important in our daily lives. Even if you have landed your job, what you'll realize is that you are the CEO of you Incorporated. And just like a CEO, you should have a personal board of advisors that gives you guidance, vision, motivation, and more importantly, holds you accountable. So what is networking? Or I would say first, let's talk about what it's not. So to me, and I'm sure people have heard the terminology because Ann Pryor talks a lot about it, is tugs. There are takers, users, givers, and sharers in the world. And what I have found is the people who struggle in career transition specifically are ones that take. They basically just go out, try to get as much connections, but not willing to help others in return. And that gets out. It's kind of like, saying something disrespectful in church, right? When you say it to one person, you might as well know that the whole church is going to know. And by the time that you get back to the work environment, everybody's heard about it. It's also not building your own stock, right? Collecting a bunch of business cards. How many times you've gone to a network event and people are just going around taking business cards, but they're really not actively engaged, understanding, learning people, understanding, and that's all about networking. It's simply not passive. It's not going to show up. People aren't going to turn around and reach out to you and say, hey, I want to network with you. Hey, I want to give you a job. It takes work. And it's definitely not spammy. How many times that as soon as you connect with somebody that you may have not met, right, originally, and then all of a sudden they want to sell you something. Again, in transition specifically, you are selling yourself, but you also want to make sure it's tempered and it's balanced. It's not just, hey, I'm here to see what I can take from you. What can I get out of you? Whether it's a lead, whether it's a job, or whether it's a recruiter that might have a job. So what is networking and what I see networking is? Well, it's really, first of all, you have to have a genuine interest in others, right? This is a give and take and it's a relationship. 10 people in career transition say, well, I don't have time. I've been out for already 3 months. It doesn't take a great amount of time to develop a relationship, but it does take effort, and it takes you having a genuine interest in others. I can give an example. When I was in my first career transition, I got a chance to get myself introduced to a gentleman. And our first conversation was the first 20 minutes about how his daughters went through our graduate school, both on scholarships in swim. And I'm like, well, my daughter's in high school. I'd really like to know more about that. And that was our first 20 minutes of conversation, just because that was kind of our preference and our baseline of our discussion. Over the years, the last 5 years, he and I have exchanged introductions for other executives and other opportunities back and forth. So again, you want to find yourself a way to be unique and different, as Kathleen Crandall says in her branding. All you have to do is show a genuine interest in others and help others. Which leads me to the next point. I think a lot of times if you're in career transition, you're like, well, I'm the one that's in need. I need the help. And for the most part, most of the people who have ever been in career transition or have been doing a lot of networking know that you need this. It's not something that you need to really sing from the mountaintops, etc. But what you want to do is be able to help them. So you may be networking for a sales and marketing role with the CFO. He may not know of an opportunity, but he may have an opportunity. He's looking for an accountant. Well, you've got a great network. If you are able to introduce, as we know, in the state of Minnesota, to find a job, professionals and above, all the way to an executive level, 80% of those jobs will be found through networking. So you definitely want to be able to help that CFO in this particular incident, because it's almost, well, I feel obligated now that you helped me, even in career transition, I'm going to help you. And so what you're trying to do in this whole relationship of networking is really develop cheerleaders in the workforce, because people are out there, they're talking about jobs all the time. And what you want to do is get enough people out there that are speaking your skill set, your praise, every time that an opportunity is aligned with your skill set. And you do that with helping others and showing a genuine interest in others. And then,
George, your slides are not on screen.
Really? Interesting. You let me go through 3 slides already. I apologize for that. Is that better?
There we go. Yep.
Oh, so should I go back for it, or should I just go forward? Well, I can share the whole presentation with everybody afterwards. But the last thing in what networking is really creating long relationships. For example, Harry and I have known each other since my first career transition, and we've helped throughout the years each other, whether it's an introduction, whether it's, I need somebody to turn around and paint my side of my house, which that's never been the case. I always use that terminology because Lenny Newman, who people may or may not know, is an Uber networker, and he always seems to know somebody, no matter what need is out there. He always knows a guy or a girl. And if anybody has ever watched us on the Saturday shows with Coffee with George and Phil, first and third Saturdays, we kind of joke about that. Every time somebody needs somebody, we just talk and call Lenny and somebody knows them. So it's really creating that long relationships over that period of time. So my question to the group, are you an introvert? Are you an extrovert? And one of the things that I learned in career transition my first time was this ambivert. This is a person that knows when to be quiet, know when to listen, to lean in, but also knows when to talk and take, kind of command of the conversation. It's kind of a balance. So I'm pausing there and asking for feedback, and if everybody's actually paying attention or they're actually eating. Nobody? Well,
George, we have one that said he was an extrovert. No one else has chimed in though.
So they must be all introverts. I'm
Could
just
be.
going to make the assumption, right? So what I have found, especially in myself, as we're growing up, I think we're most in that same age, the way that we learned how to swim was not because we had an instructor, right? Like Michael Phelps. Our parents basically grabbed us when we got close to the deep end and they tossed us in and we learned to dog paddle. Well, you know as well as I do, any extrovert will never get close to the edge for you to throw them in. So what I tell people is if you are an introvert, you don't know how to network, the thing is to first start off small, right? Find the people that you already know, whether it's church members, whether it's next door neighbors and friends. What you want to be able to do, as I said before, create this cheerleaders out in the workforce, and you can start small with just the people you know. And then you have those connections introduce you to other connections. And what you want to do is you want to specifically target what are those type of people. So for me, when I was in career transition specifically, I always said I have two avenues when people had that arbitrary, well, how can I help you? What's the ask? And where people fall short is they don't have that clearly defined. And I always stated that, you know, ideally I have two swim lanes. I'm really focused on being a chief operating officer of a medium to large company in manufacturing technology. 5 to 10% of the time, the feedback would be, hey, I know somebody, right? That's looking for that particular role. But if you don't ask, you're not going to know. And getting back to the point of there's a high percentage of jobs that are found through networking, that you have to get out there and ask. The second part is really making sure that, well, if it's crickets on that answer, we'll say, I'm still also looking to network with, in my particular point, was CEOs, board members, and private equity firms, because they were all titles and all people that potentially would hire me, right? So if you're looking for a sales engineer, you're looking for to network with sales and marketing managers or directors, right? So you want to make sure that you're specific when that ask comes, because you'll have a higher probability of moving closer toward your goal and the right people and talking to networking with the right people. You also want to learn and act likable. So this is probably for me, early on in my career, I was grown up in the military, so I won't go into the details. I'm sure everybody's seen Stripes and all those other movies as I date myself, but you learn not to smile, right? So for me, for my first probably 15 years of my career post-military, I didn't do a lot of smiling, right? And so I realized that turns people off because they're like, well, George seems like he's always grumpy, right? So you want to be able to display the likability, smile, lean in, make sure that you're listening, make sure that when you're networking, you're taking notes so that when you go back, and we'll talk about this a little later, you can reference a discussion or part of that discussion. That reinforces the person that you networked, that you paid attention, you took value in the discussion that you had, and that gets back to developing the relationships. These are all simple things, but ironically, I find a high percentage of people that are in career transition the first time, these are the things that they struggle with the most, is the simple things. And
So
then,
George,
yeah,
just we got a lot of people that after the fact came in and said that a lot of introverts, a lot of combos, that they're trying to figure it out which they really are, and have spouses that are opposite of them in some cases. So a lot of that going on. Something you mentioned just in starting this section was, starting slow with the people you know really well. And isn't that where you really learn what works and what doesn't work too?
yeah, especially when you know people very well, you're opened up more, right? Because again, if you're networking with somebody the very first time and you don't know them, it's very uncomfortable, right? What do I say? How do I approach them? What questions do I ask? And so that's why it's always best to start small and the people you do know, because it's kind of the trial and error. I'd rather have a mistake with somebody, a really good friend of mine, and he can say, hey, you should be doing this, you should be doing that, stop doing this, stop fidgeting, etc. And that all helps, right? As opposed to doing it the first time in front of a potential CEO that's looking for a COO, and they're like, well, where's this guy from, right? He doesn't know how to do this.
So that's the update. You can go on now. Thanks.
Yeah. And then I always try to tell people, when you're talking, when you're getting prepared the night before to network with these people, I always tend to take a little black book, right? And my whole process, in my book, in my webinars and in my coaching, is everything's structured. It's always discipline, right? That's why people are like, well, how were you so successful? I just learned this process and I critiqued it over time and I nail it hard, right? No one, I think Harry can attest, there's nobody out there that networks as much as I do. There's people that come close, but when I was in career transition, I was averaging 30 to 35 people a week for over 5.5 months, right? You can get there. And I was before, didn't want to talk to a soul, right? You just got to build up over time. So preparing your pipeline and some of the things, you know, when you're in career transition, your first couple of months and you haven't been out there ever, or your first time in a couple of years, the landscape's changed and you've got to get your name out there, especially if you were like me. You went into your job, your last job for 5-10 years, whatever, head down, didn't do any networking. What's important now is now you've got to really start from scratch, right? You've got to create a pipeline. So a couple of things that helped me really get a real huge jump on the right people to network and getting all those meetings set up was a very simple process, which was a 10-10-10 process. You know, in career transition specifically, or if you are looking for a client or several clients to start your new business, is reaching out to people who are in that space or in that particular field that you want to potentially work for or could potentially be a hiring manager. So what I did was I took the Star Tribune Tuesday section where they have the movers and the shakers, right? And I wrote 10 letters a day to these people 5 days a week for 10 weeks. So yes, 500 letters went out. I would say, excuse me, back up, 50 letters each week on a Sunday, representing those 5 days a week for 10 weeks. I sent out 500 letters and I basically stated, congratulations, Fred, on your recent appointment of CFO at XY company. Then I had always referenced something that I may have said, hey, you know, I took a look at their 10K. You might want to take a look at their inventory. This might be an opportunity for you to really show a quick win for yourself. And then the last line was, when it makes sense, I would really love to sit down with you and understand your transition, because again, genuine interest in them, right? What was shocking to me was out of those 500 folks that I sent those letters out to, I had more than 400 people respond, set a meeting up, which represented the other 10. They calls. So you had 10 letters a day, 10 emails a day, and 10 calls a day. And that was my process to start my pipeline. Fast forward, I don't have to do that anymore. I've got a pretty good network that I don't have to, but if you've not had a pipeline developed or it's kind of went dry, this might be a great, simple opportunity for you. It takes a little time, takes a little effort, but the huge reward is that these old school things, very few people do anymore, and they actually resonate. The feedback I got was, wow, does anybody ever send a letter anymore? You know, all I get is bills. This is really unique. I really appreciate you sending a handwritten note or typing it up and just signing it, right? Again, ways to make you distinguish yourself from the competition are very simple. Then the other thing is going direct, cold calling. This was a dare that I had in my first career transition, where somebody that I know very well stated, say, you know what, George, what about cold calling CEOs? You know, these multi-million, multi-billion dollar companies. I said, well, you know what, I'm not a sales guy, and I don't know if that'd ever work. He said, well, you're in career transition. You're always in sales now. You're selling yourself. So you got to learn. And more importantly, your message has got to be succinct and clear and concise, because no one wants to listen to somebody rambling on. So ironically enough, the job that I had with On2 for more than 4 years, I got the job by going direct. I reached out to the CEO. I noticed that they had a vice president of operations and supply chain at that particular time. I went and left him a message, and my message was, Michael, this is George Murray, recently transitioning executive that took a company from 18 million to 180 million in 18 months. I'm looking to network, saw you had an opportunity at the company, would love to talk to you about it. Click. And a couple of weeks later, Mike calls back, says, hey, love the message, really like to get to know your background a little bit more. More importantly, you know, how did you take that? It was kind of what I tell people. You want to be able to give a taste of the cake, not the ingredients, because you want them to call back for the ingredients, right? And so going direct was really an eye-opening for me, because I reached out to people like Doug Baker, who was the CEO of Ecolab at the time, running a multi-billion-dollar company, called me within a couple of days. Patrick, what's his name? He was the CEO of Graco. He just retired about 2 years ago, but he was another one that said, hey, George, love your message. Love to turn around and meet you. We actually met north of the cities at 𝙤𝙬𝙧 𝙎𝙪𝙘𝙘𝙚. Had a beer. He told me about his whole experience, his whole career at Graco, growing up in the company and finally becoming CEO. And so again, these things that you think won't work will shock you. You just got to put yourself out there. You got to be able to, you know, take a little bit of risk. You know, and just as that message, I said that 10, 10, 10, it's really that 300 characters less. No one wants to read a whole paragraph. They don't want to read a whole book. And so you want to make sure it's clear and concise, and it gives an opportunity for them to call back and want more. Value proposition. So anybody who's gone into any of these career transitions, as I did in 2016, I won't tell you the career transition group I was in, but I was pretty upset with everybody sounded the same. You know, your elevator pitch, right? You know, you start off by, well, I'm an executive that's got 22 years experience with an MBA, blah, blah. You sound like everybody else. So when it came time to come around me and there was 40 people in the room, I basically said, I'm a rappel master. Much like my military career, drop into difficult situations. I assess the group, develop a collaborative strategy, and execute the plan. Now, the plan may be the P&L, it may be the company vision, mission, and goals, but my team always exceeds the bar. Do you know anybody that needs a rappel master? Yeah, it's a little play on words, but it takes into what I'm passionate about: leadership, getting in, making decisions at my level. That's what's required, right? So it goes right to the heart of what that position might be looking for. And I bring in a little bit of my military background because that's me. I wrote value propositions for CFOs, for people who have started off as fractional, and it's helped them really launch your business, because again, it's different. It's not like everybody else's milk and cookies, right? And you want to make sure that it's really your worth. What value do you bring to the table? Whether you can go in and grow business 3x and you've had history and experience by doing so. You want to be able to provide that in the shortest amount of words so that they lean in and they say, you know what, tell me a little bit more about how you drive growth or how you control, you know, the costs and the spending, et cetera. Again, 2 or 3 things that are specific to the listener. So your value proposition is your skill set that entices a listener. And the only way that you're going to be able to do this is the homework, as I referenced earlier before, the night before, going on LinkedIn, maybe going cyber stalking on Facebook or whatever, to find out what they're passionate about, what they like. One of the gentlemen who was a CFO, we were able to, I was working with him, and he talked to the CEO, found out the CEO loves to fly Cessna planes. He flies a Cessna plane. That was basically their conversation, and he got an offer letter. The job was literally talked about 10 minutes of the whole 4-hour discussion. So you just never know. You just want to make sure that value proposition is clear and concise, and it comes off like you own it, only you own it. You're being yourself, and it makes you unique and different. Again, it has to be about that person you're talking to. So again, you got to do the heavy lifting. I tell people a lot of times in their first career transition, you know, if they in a professional environment or they've been a manager or a leader or whatever, a lot of times they've been delegating. Well, you can't delegate job transition. It's going to be the most difficult job that you've had, but it's, I think, going to be some of the most rewarding, because it's going to bring out your strengths. You're going to change if you let it in the right aspects. And it has for me. And again, taste of the cake, not the recipe. So one of the things that I believe is really killing people in their first networking meetings is not knowing a clear ask, and then making sure that you follow and end every networking meeting with a genuine interest of how you can help that person. Even though you may be in career transition, there's a lot of things. You've got a great network. You can do certain things. You can volunteer. You can put yourself out there and say, hey, try me for 30 days. And if you don't, there's no blood, no foul. They don't turn around and lose anything. And you've actually experienced something, right? Other than sitting at home in front of a computer and submitting resumes, hoping for the best. So again, it's really making sure that you have a primary and a backup when you're talking in networking terms. It's a clear ask. You know, what are you looking for? Well, I'm looking for ideally a sales and marketing role that I can add value in a technology, digital environment, etc. You know, clear and concise. Wait for a response. If they say, well, and this is where you really need to be aware of body language. They may come off and say, you know what, I really don't, and nobody comes to mind. And you say, well, that's okay. But, you know, I noticed that you might be, you know, connected to some directors of sales and marketing and vice presidents of sales and marketing. I'm really also looking to extend my network. Is it possible that you can introduce me to some of these folks? And that's where every time I've left a networking meeting, I've always left with another 4 or 5 where I've experienced networking with people in their first career transition. They left with, I think I've lost 30 minutes of my life. I can't get back, and I didn't see any value. And then again, most important thing, it's the simple things that make you unique and different. It's how can you help, right? Always following up, making sure, hey, I can help you with a search role, right? I've got some free time. If you're looking for an accountant, I may be able to look at my network and see if I can introduce you to a few people. And again, back to that earlier comment of that more than great 80% of folks get jobs through networking. They're willing to turn around and take your advice, even though they just may have met you. It's better than just getting a resume and hoping that this person's going to turn out. Right? It's all about how you show up and how you add value to that particular networking meeting. So preparing for it. So this is all the things that you can do, but what you want to do prior to even sitting down your first time with networking is making sure you prepare. What I did was, as I said, take a little black book. I've literally got stacks of them. That's how I wrote my first book, Cut Your Career Search Time in Half. Was I took all those networking meetings and all the best practices of what everybody had shared with me, and I plugged them in that book. But one of the things that I did was I would go down and say, okay, I'm meeting Harry tomorrow. Harry and I have 147 common connections. And I would turn around and say, well, maybe there's certain things. Oh yeah, well, Harry and I are both in the Grace Church and networking meetings. That's an opportunity for me to start a discussion, because again, if you're an introvert, you want to find ways to come in and break the ice. The first thing is finding commonalities. Hey, you know what? I noticed that you worked at this company. They were a supplier to us. Can you tell me a little bit about your experience? That's the ice that breaks, and then you're off to the races because you're talking about that both something that you have in common. You also want to identify and get prepared for the next question that's going to come in that networking meeting, which is, how can I help you, Sally, Tom, Harry, right? It's, well, I've got some target companies. I'd like to see if you know anybody in these that you might be willing to introduce yourself to or introduce me to. But one of the other things that I found to be even more beneficial is once you've created that bond at that first networking meeting, the follow-up, as we'll get to, is so critically important, because this is a word that can really set you apart. And again, tell people show up to impress. I didn't do that today. I drove right straight from my work on my Harley, and I just had to do my hair and put a dress shirt on so that it was at least somewhat presentable. But I always tell people, there's a gentleman that I met in my first career transition that was out for more than 17 months, and bless his heart, always had a positive attitude, always willing to help others. And Mark Steen, who he was, always dressed up in a suit and tie, no matter where he went, networking meetings, networking one-on-one. He was always just dressed to impress. And the response from him was, George, you just never know. You might be talking and networking with somebody that might be potentially your next manager, right? And you always want to give that first best impression. And the last thing too is make sure that you leverage the meeting in such a way it's a 70-30. They speak, they being the person that you're networking with, even though you're in career transition. They speak 70% of the time. You take copious notes because you want to use that later, as we'll talk about on how to follow up. But the 30% of the time, the first networking meeting is knowing that clear ask when they ask, how can I help you? And the introduction phase, right? Your value proposition. Those are the two things that split your 30% of your time. Then they realize, hey, the person didn't commandeer the networking meeting. I can't tell you how many people I've sat with either 30 minutes or 45 minutes. And for 44 minutes, they told me all their woes and everything. I always reference, they talked to me like Eeyore, right? Oh, woe was me. And no one really wants to talk to an Eeyore, and let alone want to spend any time helping Eeyore out of the mud pit. So finally, as we kind of come into the stretch, is follow-up. Follow-up is very critically important, not just for the person that you just recently networked with, but also if Harry, for example, were to introduce you to me. It's important for you that you realize that you're on a timeline, right? So I tell people, if you got introduced from a common connection or somebody that you've met, you have a timeline. You need to make sure that you get introduced and you also respond within 24 to 36 hours. Now, you definitely don't want to come off too needy. So not the first 5 seconds after the introduction, but let a few hours pass and say, hey, you know what, Harry, I really appreciate the introduction to George. George, is really nice to meet you. I really love to find some time to turn around and network with you to find out how I can turn around and be better at networking and land my next role. What are some of the times that you're available? You also want to thank the person, right? Follow-up is critically important. Even after you've networked with those individuals, to make yourself unique is just say, hey, listen, you know what, Harry, I really appreciate the time that you spent with me yesterday. Because again, the thing that's most important in life is not money, it's time, because we only have a limited amount. And if people are going to give you 30 minutes or an hour, that's a huge investment. So you want to make sure that you recognize that and you thank people for it. And then every 4 to 6 weeks, follow up with these people, right? This is your new network, right? You want to make sure that you continue to be top of mind, which we'll talk about, I think, in the next slide. And then every 5 to 8 weeks, just a brief update. Hey, Harry, it's been 4 weeks. You know, this is what I've been doing. I interviewed at, company XY, final interviews of company ABC. And then more importantly, Harry, this is what I'm continuing to look for ideally in a position or a role. And then signed, is there anything that I can help you? I would love an update. And I can tell you, by doing this kept me top of mind, and it also kept people really actively engaged in my transition and helping me. Keeping top of mind. So there's so many things that we don't take advantage, and the things that we should do, but slightly different. And what I mean by that is that everybody gets LinkedIn notifications. People got promotions. People got birthdays if they share their birthdays on LinkedIn, right? Every morning you get those notifications. You can do one of two things. You can ignore, well, actually one of three things. You can ignore it, or you can just hit the congratulations like everybody else. It doesn't make you unique or different. Or you can put a little bit more thought into it, right? So a couple of examples that I used is, instead of saying just happy birthday, I always turn around and came up with some elaborate one that says, hey, this year you put another candle on your cake, and I want to wish you the best. It's a couple of lines. It may have only taken you a couple of seconds, but again, that's another way of making you unique and different, where people remember you, keep you top of mind. That says, you know what, every time George announces, promotion to me, or a new job, or a work anniversary, he puts a little bit of time in it. And you know what? That makes you unique and different, and it makes you memorable, and it makes you want to be a great network, and people want to help you. And then the cadence, update your network, right? As I said, 5 to 7 weeks is a good time frame that says, because although each day may feel like a month, before you know it, 3 or 4 weeks go by, people's lives get back into their own grooves and they forget about you. So a way to do that is just by 400 words or less. Hey, Harry, this is what I've been doing. This is what I'm still looking for. Love an update from you. Last thing, what I found, not only in career transition, but post-career transition, when you do land, and you will all land, is that a personal board of advisors. So to me, these are 3 to 5 people that they're not all like, for example, me, I'm an operations supply chain. They're definitely not going to be all 3 to 5 supply chain operations. I've got that base covered. For me, it was salespeople, executives. It was also finance people that could help me in all aspects of my career transition. They help you connect with others, right? They also are great listeners, sounding board. They may have been there. So you'll find out that my personal board advisors, a lot of people that I met in career transition. They also gave me advice, even sometimes when I didn't want it, but they also hold you accountable. And I can tell you that in career transition, we can tend to get frustrated. We tend to get a little irritable. We also can get a little lazy. And the good people on your personal board advisor will say, stop that crap, get back into the game, right? So this was my personal board advisors. Everybody knows Ann. I was gracious enough to talk to Ann at least once a month to get what was updated in LinkedIn, all the algorithms. Lisa Fraga was a really good friend of mine, and she reminded me of this, my sister who passed away. She told it like it is, really told me to sometimes to stop crying and man up and get out there. The middle individual was Alan McClellan. He was actually one of the CEOs that I cold called. And if you've read my book, he's literally the first person that when you open the book, he writes the first recognition. And he talks about our first meeting. Jenny Jeffords was an energy coach for me. When you get those thanks but no thanks letters, and you will, who's around to turn around and pump you up and say, hey, you know what, that was probably not the great opportunity that you needed or wanted anyway. You need those people. And then of course, Ryan Carlson, who was my finance guy, that made sure that I didn't go into the poorhouse as I was going through this career transition. But again, I highly suggest this. These people will also help you even beyond your career transition. Once you land, and you will, they'll always be there to help you. You can, if you're in a business like I am right now, and you may not want to talk to the senior executive team, you may need somebody to bounce ideas or things that you maybe suggest to change or whatever. It's always good to get a sounding board, and these people can help you do that. So that's it. For those who don't know, our next show, my show, which is Coffee with George and Phil, it's all on first and third Saturdays of every month at 8:15. So if you got a coffee and you don't have anything else to do, you can chime in for about 22 minutes. This week, we're talking about leveling up and helping your team in a business or as a leader. And those are the topics that we're going to be covering along with others. And of course, we have another wonderful guest, which is Kim Reese. She's a chief human resources officer. She's actually one that actually gave me a lot of insight to my next book that's due out in August. And then if you haven't got the book and you want it, you can get it at discount at Kirkhouse Publishing just by using all in caps, hired 15% off. Questions?
George, right now we don't have any, but I had one quick question on your value prop, or where you talk about, like, when you were in a network meeting and you're following bunches of other people who all sounded the same. You came up with the Rappel Master one. Try to give the because Rappel Master, that was easy for you because obviously your military background, it fit, but a lot of people have struggled with this very problem. Can you give any sound advice about how to construct it more effectively, or how long it took you to construct it, and what you went about doing, how you went about doing it?
Well, even though I tell people try to keep it to 30 seconds or less because we live in an attention deficit society, right? So it's got to be meaningful. It's got to be impactful. That one that I referenced, Repel Master, took me over 3 hours to create. 3 hours to create, and then more than 3 weeks to really roll off my tongue where I didn't have to read it from a cue card. And more importantly, I spoke about it with passion, and it was me. It was truly me. It wasn't somebody else. It's value proposition. So one of the things I helped a CFO in his creating his value proposition is just getting his background. And he said, you know, one of the things, George, early on in my, college days and high school, he says, I was a band leader. And I'm like, okay, well, we need to use that in your regards to your value proposition. And once we were able to turn around and spend probably a good hour or so, we basically created a value proposition about a band leader. He started the same thing. He goes, well, like my college days, I'm a band leader. I am interacting with all different departments and making sure that they sing on key and they're in the right notes. And that's how I, as a CFO, collaborate and draw profitability and growth in organizations. Right?
Yeah, that's a good example.
And to me, I mean, we just had to pull it out of him, right? It's in everybody. We just got to start to think a little bit about it. And as I tell people, don't get frustrated. A 30-second value proposition isn't going to take you 30 seconds to create. My first one, Repel Master, took me 3 hours. My second one that I use when I'm probably networking with just professionals, maybe not executives, I use I'm an executive that takes flat to declining companies. I turn them around on the top and the bottom line while injecting a more equally accountable work culture. Do you know anybody that needs somebody like that? That's like 22 seconds. That's the top, the bottom line, and the culture. And anybody who's been in manufacturing for the last 20 years, that's the 3 big problems that are in manufacturing. So again, you're going to zero right in. They're going to hear and they're going to say, hey, you know what? Tell me how you change a culture, especially now, right?
Right. No, and those are really good examples, but I think the key to most people is they think that this is something simple that you can do really quickly. It is an iterative process. It takes time. It takes a lot of experimenting. It takes a lot of sounding boards. And in fact, your board of advisors is very helpful in this area too, because they can tell you whether it sounds good.
Yeah, use them, right? You'll say, hey, here's what I'm thinking, right? I can tell you that the first one didn't come off so well, and Lisa Fraga was the first one to say, that's crap, George. You need to go back to the drawing board.
Right. Yeah, and then that's where you really have to build that network of people that you can trust for that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
So I think it's important for people to know that it just doesn't happen overnight. It's something that's iterative and that takes a while to do. So good.
Absolutely.
Good. You do have quite an impressive board of directors board of advisors there. So
yeah, it's expanded over the years. It's a little bit bigger than that, but that was my original one.
Right.
I think now my personal board's about like 14, but it's all depending on what your need is, right?
Right. I imagine it's difficult to have a show with Lenny because you probably have a hard time keeping up, getting a word in. You mentioned Kathleen Crandall and Ann Pryor. Both of those, for those people who don't know, you have an opportunity to go to some of their classes through some of the transition groups out there, like what's the name of the one that I can't think of it for that Kathleen Crandall's group, or you can sign up for her class and they'll pay for it.
Hire.org.
Hire.org.
So if you are collecting or eligible for collecting unemployment, you can go to hire.org and sign up. And it's state funding funds that help you secure a mini master's program like it did with me in my first career transition. But I also highly suggest that everybody sign up for Ann Pryor's LinkedIn classes, the 2 of them, as well as Kathleen Crandall's branding. So here's an example. Prior to them me taking their classes, on average, I would have anywhere from 70 to 80 people look at my LinkedIn profile. And up until the last 5 years, it hasn't gone below probably like 1,200. I can't remember when it was the last time, but I can go to my LinkedIn profile and show everybody. But here's the metrics that you're going to be looking at, right? Let's see.
Right over there under your name.
Yeah, so 1,424 people have looked at my LinkedIn profile in the last 90 days.
Yeah, that's impressive.
It's all about networking. You got to do it.
Yep.
Might be painful, but as you start to develop it and do more of it, you'll get better at it. I did.
Right. You know, I mean, I think one of the other parts that you mentioned that really a lot of people struggle with is the how can I help? They think it's something that, you know, is it's got to be something huge, and it doesn't always have to be huge. It's like something you can offer somebody, introduction, information, any number of things can be helpful to an individual.
Yeah, a lead, you know, like I always joke, you know, but I can't tell you how many times I've been in the presence of Lenny where somebody's like, you know, I need somebody to turn around and paint my room. He's like, I know a guy. I need somebody to help me with IT. I know a girl. I mean, that's the power of networking, right?
Right.
I wish I had done this when I was in my 20s. I mean, maybe I would have written 5 more books and maybe been the president of the United States. No, probably not. That's too much.
Yeah. Well, I didn't get any additional questions, so
But anyway, if anybody is struggling, anybody needs some direction or whatever, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm always willing to help people. I've been there a few times. I know the struggles and the trials and the tribulations and the frustrations.
well, excellent, George. We do appreciate your time. Thank you for doing this. You know, thank you for doing June too. I mean, both were very educational, and I think anyone who has attended and listened really did learn a lot. So we do appreciate it. Thank you, George.
Right. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. So, with that, what I will do next is I will go into our Crossroads orientation and what we offer. Just give me a second to find it. Uh-oh. It disappeared on me, so just bear with me a second here. Wonder how I'm going to get that in there. Okay, welcome to Crossroads. Can everyone, I think you can hear me now. Apparently I was muted. As part of signing up for this course, this seminar, you will receive a free gift. How long, oh Lord, and how long, oh Lord, how long is the title of the book. It's a great book, and it has a lot of devotionals in it, and it will help you through this transition period. The author was gracious enough to do a seminar for us, and it was very good. And the things in it will be very helpful to you. So I hope you enjoy. MN Crossroads is our website. You probably know it a little bit because you had to sign up for the seminar on it. It is a wealth of information for job seekers, people in transition, or for people who are just looking for information. For one, we have a job board that has people and connections on it that you can actually reach out to. So check out our job postings. There's many on there, and hopefully you'll find something there that interests you. There's something for employers there too. So if you're an employer and you're joining us, certainly check that out. There's a way to post your jobs and other things there. So definitely a resource center for all. There's and I'm going to talk about some of the other things that are on there, so I won't continue to go through the things that are on. Twin Cities Crossroads groups, we have 3 of them when we're meeting in person, and we're looking to go in person pretty soon. Hopefully, we're talking about September, October this year, possibly. So stay tuned. That'll be on the website, mncrossroads.com. The 3 sites, starting with the original site at Grace Church in Eden Prairie. The site that I'm more familiar with, the one in Woodbury at Woodbury Lutheran Church. And then our newest addition in Arden Hills at North Heights Lutheran Church. When we do go live, again, there will be networking meetings there. The seminars will be there. So check out that on our website. When we do go live, it will be the place to be. Weekly opportunities. One of the big things that happens at Grace Church is networking with Grace, and it's online though now. So check it out. Sign up for Thursday mornings with Wes Roper and Wes Tang. They facilitate the group. They will show you the ins and outs of networking in the Twin Cities. And they use the same formulas that George talked about tonight. So they're consummate networkers, and they will help you get up to speed on how to network effectively. If you're looking for additional help with one-on-one coaching per se, you can sign up online on our website. What might you want coaching on? Well, you might need coaching on interviewing, or you may need coaching on your resume, maybe your LinkedIn profile, maybe on how to create the perfect tagline, or the perfect introduction, or how to improve it. All those types of things you can get coaching for online. So look to our online sign up for coaching and see what happens. That's where hopefully the magic will begin. Job transition and prayer support. Many times this business called transition is very difficult. George alluded to it, that sometimes we get those letters that say you're not the perfect candidate for our job. Sorry. And you just need a little extra help during that time frame, or you're going through a tough stretch in a lot of ways, and you need some help through prayer. We have a specific group of people who really do well in the prayer area and love to help people through prayer. So sign up. Our soul care group will be able to help you out in many ways. One of the biggest things with Crossroads is the online classes. The online classes are small group classes. They're an 8-week course. They're designed to really touch on many of the high-level components of career transition, job search. One of the big things I think in the first module is doing just assessing your own attitude about where you are and where you are in your job search and where you are on the transition scale. Many times we are laid off, or we're let go, and we're not in the right frame of mind. And the 8-week course is a perfect place to do a quick assessment on that, to see where you are, and hopefully propel you into the positive side and move you forward down the line so that you can be successful in your transition. Assessments, we talk about them all the time. What are they? Well, skills. What skills are you proficient at? What can you talk about in your elevator pitch or your introduction? Those are the types of things that are critical. The skills that you have, then you can communicate effectively, that sell you as a perfect candidate for the job. Networking, I think we've covered that one tonight, but there's some nuances to networking that we talk about in the small groups, and you get the group dynamic of sharing what's been working, what hasn't, that kind of thing. Targeting companies. A lot of times people don't know how to target companies, and that might be an eye opener for you. Other things, we cover a lot of different things about the job search that are really part and parcel of the whole experience. One of the key things is you're around a team, and in a team you usually get that accountability, encouragement, and moral support. And without that team, sometimes you don't get that. And And we've heard a lot of different career transition stories over the years where through the small group, people have really thrived because of the light accountability or the encouragement or just the general moral support of the team and the people, the friendships that are bonded, the bonds that are created through the course. It can be very important to some people as they go through transition, to many people, almost all people. And it also you have an opportunity to explore God's perspective in your job search and how your life may be better through actually finding a job where you're living God's word and be able to do the types of things that you want to do in life. So there are many classes beginning. We have one beginning next month, and I will share that with you shortly. Our LinkedIn group is called MN Crossroads Career Network. Type that in the search bar, and up will come this wonderful link here. You can join over here on over here on the side here and just ask to join, and you'll be connected. One of the things that this has is about 2,300 people, 23 to 2,400. This picture shows 2,100. It's grown since this picture. It's also, we have events on here. We have people sharing ideas. We have people sharing information. And above all, the connections on here all have gone through transition in one shape or form and are willing to help. So you might find somebody that can help you match that yourself up with the target company you're looking for, or a connection that you're looking for that has a connection with someone you're looking to meet up with. So check out our LinkedIn group. It can be a great resource for you. My direction are not going well today. In addition to our LinkedIn group, we have a YouTube channel. And one of the things you'll see on this page right here is a number of different speakers who have been with it. You see a picture here of George in the middle and his 4 gears to job transition, which he did last month for us for a seminar. There's all of these individuals that are on here gave stellar presentations with great information in them. So if you didn't see them and you want to see them, go to our YouTube page and find it. Type in MN Crossroads Career and it'll pull you up to this page, and you'll be able to access the videos that are out there of the prior seminars that'll be useful for you. And in addition to that, one of the key things over the years that we've been able to enjoy is the support of Thrivent. Thrivent's been a real wonderful resource to us at Crossroads. They've helped us with a lot of different things, helped us put a lot of things together. So it helped a lot of people who are in transition. One of the things they're helping with now is several seminars on what to have as financial considerations during job transition. So check those out. You can access those through the website. The times and locations for those seminars are on the website. So check that out. I think you'll enjoy that. Crossroads isn't Crossroads without our volunteers. Here's a cross section of those volunteers. And they're anchored down at the bottom by Harry Urschel, who we've alluded to many times on tonight's seminar. Harry's in the background tonight, making sure that everything goes according to plan, technically. So thank you, Harry, for being here tonight and for sharing your technical wisdom and occasionally helping us out as we do the seminar. So thank you to all the volunteers who help MN Crossroads do what we do so effectively to help those in transition. So thank you. And to those of you who are looking for a spiritual home, either in person or streaming, you can still receive the streaming feeds at a lot of places, but especially at our 3 websites here, woodburylutheran.org, North Heights Church, and grace.church. So check those out, and you can check out those websites and find directions to the actual sites if you're not familiar with them. And maybe you can go in person and really find the home that you're looking for, spiritual home that you're looking for, that is. So there that is. So that's the seminar or the overview of Crossroads. I hope you found something in there that you, I'd like to thank everyone who contributed tonight, George, Skip, and thank you, Harry, for everything you do in the background. You'll receive an email tomorrow with several things that we talked about tonight. And then remember, the webinar posting or recording will be out on our YouTube channel very soon. The 8-week course that I told you that was available this month is starting on the 19th, July 19th, Tuesday. It's a 2:30 to 4 o'clock class. So check it out on the website, sign up. I guarantee you'll find the seminar to be to your liking and something that'll really help you in transition. Remember our networking meetings every Thursday morning, networking through Grace. They're definitely a useful tool, again, to help you jumpstart your networking and maybe get some connections that will lead to some of those meetings. Remember, one of the things George alluded to in his presentation is that sometimes during a week he'd have up to 35 networking meetings. That's a lot of networking meetings, and maybe George can handle that many. I know I couldn't, but if you can get up to 20, 25, that's a good number to really focus on. So, there's a goal for you in mind. Try to set your goal and meet it through networking. One-on-one help, if you are looking for one-on-one help, remember that's available through our website. The prayer support is out there. We're going to end a little early tonight, but I wanted to let you all know we have a seminar coming up next Thursday, July 21st. It will be at 7:30 in the morning to 9, and you won't want to miss this one either. It is Nathan Perez talking about the 20-minute networking guide. Sign up early because there will be a lot of people there or will be attending, and you don't want to be the one that missed it. So Nathan Perez will be doing his presentation on a 20-minute. I've heard it up to 5, probably closer to 10 times. Each time I find something new in it that can helps me with my networking. So I highly recommend it. So I hope you found this seminar and this evening to be worth your while, and that it's something you can use in your job transition tomorrow. I wish you all the best in your search, and we hope you'll be back soon, and take the extra 15 minutes and have a great evening. Thank you.